When Ethan's wealthy parents discovered that Zara's father, Samuel, was a janitor, they couldn't hide their quiet mockery. To them, he was just an ordinary man with nothing to offer. But what they didn't expect was the gift he brought to the wedding. One so powerful it left the entire room speechless and shattered their pride. What could a humble janitor reveal that would silence laughter and command respect? Stick around as this incredible story unfolds with Ethan proposing Zara, and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he knelt on one knee in the middle of Central Park. In his hand, he held a simple but elegant ring, his voice steady despite the nervousness in his chest. "Zara," he said softly, "will you marry me?" Zara's breath caught, her hand flying to her mouth. Her dark eyes welled with tears as a smile broke across her face. "Yes," she whispered, her voice catching before she repeated, "Yes!" Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, and as she hugged him, applause rose from the small crowd that had stopped to watch. She laughed through her tears, burying her face in his shoulder as the moment sank in. Despite happiness of the moment, Zara felt a knot in her stomach when a thought about meeting Ethan's wealthy parents, Richard and Lillian Bennett, ran through her mind. She knows they hold strong views about class and status, and her father, Samuel, a school janitor, might not fit their expectations. Ethan reassures her, saying, "They'll love you once they get to know you." In the evening, Ethan and Zara stepped into his parents' Upper East Side townhouse to share the news. Zara glanced around, taking in the grand marble floors, towering ceilings, and sparkling chandeliers. Richard and Lillian Bennett greeted their son warmly, their smiles polite but distant when their eyes fell on Zara. Over glasses of fine wine, Ethan shared details of the proposal, the golden sunlight in Central Park, and Zara's tearful yes. His parents nodded politely, their smiles reserved. But when the conversation turned to Zara, their enthusiasm faltered. "She seems lovely," Lillian said, carefully choosing her words, "but does she come from a respectable family? We wouldn't want Ethan marrying beneath his station." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept his response neutral. "Her father's a hard-working man who raised her on his own," he said. "Well, as long as the wedding is tasteful," Richard said dismissively, shifting the conversation to more comfortable topics, investments, real estate, and the dinner party they were hosting that evening. Later, when Zara suggested introducing her father to the Bennetts before the wedding, they declined without hesitation. "The wedding day will be soon enough," Lillian said with a thin smile, already envisioning the guest list and venue, as though Zara's family were merely an accessory to the event. Ethan sighed inwardly. He knew his parents well enough to recognize their focus on appearances, and he hoped they'd see past it in time to accept the woman he loved. A few days later, Zara visits her childhood home in Queens, a modest but warm house that her father, Samuel, has lovingly maintained for decades. Samuel, her father, opened the door with a wide smile. "There's my girl," he said, pulling her into a warm hug. As they sat at the kitchen table, Zara nervously traced the rim of her cup. "Dad," she began, "I'm worried about Ethan's parents. They're different. I'm afraid they won't understand us, or you." Samuel leaned back, his steady gaze calming her. "I've raised you to hold your head high, Zara. Let them think what they want. The truth always comes out in the end." He stood and disappeared into the hall, returning with a small wooden box. Setting it on the table, he opened it to reveal a miniature replica of their home. Every detail was lovingly crafted: the porch, the garden, even the tiny crack in the upstairs window. Zara stared, her hand flying to her mouth. "Dad, this is beautiful. You've been working on this?" Samuel nodded, his smile full of quiet pride. "This house is where everything started for us. It's more than just wood and nails. It's our story. And one day, others will see that too." Zara ran her fingers over the tiny shingles, her worries easing under her father's unwavering confidence. As she left later that evening, the box remained on the table, a quiet promise waiting for its moment to shine. The wedding day arrives at a luxurious venue in Manhattan. Richard and Lillian spare no expense, showcasing their wealth and influence to hundreds of guests. Zara and Samuel arrive early. Zara's dress flowed elegantly as she walked beside Samuel, who carried the small wooden box tucked carefully under his arm, his modest suit a sharp contrast to the Bennett's opulence. Samuel glanced around, his expression calm but curious. Zara, sensing his unease, gave his arm a reassuring squeeze. "You okay, Dad?" she asked softly. He nodded with a faint smile. "I'm fine, Zara. This is your day. Let's focus on that." Across the room, Lillian watched them enter, her sharp eyes narrowing as she took in Samuel's unassuming figure. She leaned toward Richard, who was greeting a group of prominent business associates. "That must be Zara's father," she whispered. "He looks so ordinary." Richard gave Samuel a passing glance before returning to his conversation. "As long as everything runs smoothly," he said dismissively. Samuel's presence didn't go unnoticed by the other guests, many of whom whispered quietly as they eyed the small wooden box he carried. Zara felt the weight of their judgment and reached for her father's hand. "You don't need to carry that now, Dad," she said softly. Samuel smiled gently. "I'm fine, Zara. This box holds more than they can see." The reception was in full swing, with guests mingling, and the Bennetts ensuring their presence was felt at every corner. Richard and Lillian stood near a cluster of their closest friends when a guest from Zara's side joined them. "Zara's father is remarkable," the guest said with genuine warmth. "Samuel's been a janitor for over 30 years, raised her all on his own, and still finds ways to give back to the community." Lillian raised her eyebrows, fighting a smirk. As soon as the guest walked away, she leaned into Richard, chuckling quietly. "A janitor?" Ethan didn't think to mention that little detail. Richard joined in, shaking his head with a low laugh. "A janitor? That explains the small box. What's in it, you think? A mop?" Lillian stifled a giggle, looking across the room where Samuel stood quietly by Zara's side. He looks like he walked in from a completely different event. Their soft laughter carried between them as Zara noticed their pointed looks. Turning to her father, she whispered, "Dad?" Samuel smiled gently, his hands steady on the wooden box. "Let them laugh," he said calmly. "They won't be laughing for long." Zara bit her lip, her heart aching, but her pride in her father unwavering. Samuel remained composed, his quiet dignity untouched by their mockery. The box under his arm, however, held truths they couldn't yet imagine. Later in the evening, Richard shares an anecdote with a colleague over drinks. "Years ago, we tried to buy this prime piece of land for a luxury condo project. We offered millions, but the owner wouldn't sell. He clung to that tiny shack like it was the crown jewels." His colleague chuckled. "Some people just don't know better." Richard smirked, his eyes drifting toward Samuel, who stood quietly with the wooden box under his arm. "Exactly. People like that. They hold on to scraps, too stubborn and small-minded to see the bigger picture. It's why they stay where they are." Samuel, standing nearby, overheard but didn't react, his calm expression unwavering as he turned and walked away, but his subtle smile suggests there's more to the story. The reception reaches its emotional peak as the speeches begin. Richard and Lillian take the stage first, delivering a self-congratulatory toast. "As parents, we've always strived to give Ethan the best, and today we see him joining a family that reflects his values and upbringing." Their words are laced with subtle condescension, implying Zara's family is lucky to join theirs. Then it was Samuel's turn. The room grew quieter as he walked up with the wooden box in hand, his presence a stark contrast to the Bennett's polished grandeur. Setting the box gently on the podium, he looked out at the guests, his voice steady and calm. "This," he said, gesturing to the box, "is the house where Zara and I built our lives. It wasn't grand, but it was filled with love, sacrifice, and dreams." He opened the box, revealing the miniature replica of their home. Gasps rippled softly through the room as guests leaned in to see the intricate details. Samuel continued, his tone unwavering. "Every corner of this house holds a story of resilience and values that shaped Zara into the extraordinary woman she is today. And today, I gift this house to the bride and the groom. This is my wedding gift to my beloved daughter." The crowd sat in silence, their curiosity piqued as the wooden box seemed to carry far more significance than they'd imagined. Richard and Lillian exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier confidence beginning to waver. With deliberate care, Samuel reached into a hidden compartment in the miniature and pulled out an envelope. He walked it over to Zara and Ethan, handing it to them with a nod. Ethan unfolded the letter and began to read, his voice steady but thick with emotion, as the room leaned in to listen. "Ruby and Noah, this home has always been a symbol of love, perseverance, and the foundation of our family. Today, I give it to you. not just as a gift, but as a reminder that no matter where life takes you, your roots will always be strong. Can keep this house as a place to call home, transform it into something new, or pass it on to others in need. It is yours to shape, just as you will shape your lives together. Whatever you or choose, let it be guided by love, respect, and purpose, values that will always lead you home. With all my love. Ethan paused, glancing at Zara, whose tears fell silently. Her father's words had captured not just their history, but their future as well. While the room sat in quiet awe, Richard and Lillian remained stone-faced, their confusion apparent. To them, it was still just a house, and they couldn't understand why it mattered so much. But the emotion in Zara's eyes and the steadiness in Samuel's voice hinted at a deeper significance, one they were far from grasping. As Samuel stepped back, his gaze calm and assured, the miniature home seemed to take on a life of its own, a symbol of all they had endured and the strength it had given them to carry forward. Samuel turned to Richard, his calm gaze steady as the room fell silent. He spoke with quiet confidence, his voice carrying the weight of years gone by. "Years ago, your company approached me to buy this house," he said, his words deliberate. "You offered me millions, a fortune for a man like me, but I turned it down. Not because I couldn't use the money, but because this house wasn't for sale." The audience leaned in, riveted by his words. Samuel's voice softened as he continued, the emotion in his tone undeniable. "This house wasn't just bricks and wood. It was where my daughter learned to dream, where every struggle we faced turned into strength, and where love gave us hope when there was little else. This house was never about its value in dollars. It was about its worth in memories and lessons." He gestured to Zara and Ethan, his expression proud. "Today I give this house to them, not as a transaction, but as a legacy, a reminder that no matter where life takes them, their foundation will always be built on love, perseverance, and family." Gasps rippled through the room. Guests exchanged shocked glances, whispers beginning to rise. Richard's face froze, his jaw tightening as the realization hit him. Samuel was the man who had cost him a lucrative deal, the owner who refused to give up his shack. The earlier laughter and quiet mockery from the Bennetts hung heavy in the air, now overshadowed by Samuel's quiet dignity. His words left no room for argument, no way to diminish the value of what he had held on to all these years. The weight of the moment pressed down on Richard and Lillian, their carefully curated image faltering under the truth they could no longer ignore. After the speech, Richard and Lillian approached Samuel, their usual confidence replaced by humility. Richard extended his hand, his voice quieter than usual. "I misjudged you," he admitted. "Thank you for raising such an extraordinary woman. She's everything Ethan could ever need." Samuel shook his hand with a gracious smile. "It's never too late to recognize what truly matters," he said, his tone steady and forgiving. Lillian nodded, offering a faint smile of her own. Though words failed her, the sincerity in her expression spoke volumes. As the reception wound down, Zara and Ethan found Samuel and embraced him tightly. "We'll honor this house, Dad," Zara said, her voice filled with emotion. Ethan nodded in agreement. "It's more than just a house, it's a part of who we are now," he added. They began discussing plans, from using the house as a retreat for their future family to transforming it into a space that could serve the community. The house, once a private symbol of resilience and love, now became a bridge between two families from vastly different worlds, a reminder of what truly matters. The Bennetts drove home in silence, the grandeur of the evening now a distant memory. The weight of Samuel's words lingered heavily in the air. Lillian finally broke the silence, her voice soft but thoughtful. "We mocked him for being a janitor," she said, shaking her head. "But he's richer than we'll ever be." Richard, staring out the window at the passing city lights, replied after a long pause. "He gave them love," he murmured. "We only gave them expectations." The car continued down the quiet streets, the Bennetts lost in their own reflections, realizing how much they still had to learn about the meaning of true wealth. And so, the story comes full circle. A humble janitor, mocked for his simplicity, revealed a gift that wasn't just about value, but about love, resilience, and legacy. It left everyone speechless and reminded us all that true wealth isn't measured in money, but in the lives we touch and the lessons we pass down. What are your thoughts on this story? If you were in Samuel's shoes, Would you have made the same decision to hold on to the house, or would you have taken the money? And if you were in Richard and Lillian's place, how would you have reacted? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you were touched by this story, please remember to support us with a like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.